Hi, I'm Stephen Michael, and welcome to another episode of Filmmaking for Dumbasses. Today I want to talk about the Red Komodo and if it's still worth it in 2022. I've had the Komodo since the release and I've been in love with it since. If you have been wanting to get into the Red ecosystem, I suggest this is the best place to start. The Red Komodo starts around like $5,995. In my opinion, you guys always hear this from me, it's a little bit pricey for the consumer, but if you want to get into the Red ecosystem, this is the best way to start, because if you know Red, most of their cameras start at like around 20 grand. When Red initially built this was supposed to be like a super GoPro or a crash cam or a B cam or C cam. In most situations, this was the main design behind this camera, because it's the crash cam. It's meant to take a beating, so you want to be able to hook it up to cars. It can fall, it can deal with high temperatures, it can deal with low temperatures, it can deal with water and rain. That doesn't mean drop it in a pool, but if you're out in the rain and stuff like that, as long as your lenses are weather sealed as well, you shouldn't have too many problems. If you don't want to believe me that this camera is a crash camera, go check out Michael Bay and some of the things he's done with this camera. If you're like me, you can get away with using this camera still as your A cam. I've used this cam as my A camera on plenty of jobs as far as short films, commercials, corporate jobs. So I want to talk about some of the pros with this camera. So one, like I said, when you first buy this camera, you're automatically getting into the Red ecosystem, so which means Red RAW. In my opinion, Red RAW has the best RAW Kodak out there because it just allows so much more in post-production. Number two, it shoots in 6K, of course, with global shutter, meaning when you're doing moving shots or those quick shots, you're not really getting that weird warp feeling that you get with most DSLRs. I mentioned this one too, but number three, the camera handles a great beating, meaning you can go get those risky shots. You don't have to worry about too much of the weather. This camera's built like a tank and it was designed to handle rigorous shooting. This camera also comes with tons of mounting options, so you can build rigs almost any way you want. I've seen this camera built out plenty of different ways and usually never the same way as someone else built it. This thing just gives you so many different mounting options. Pro number four, as far as like learning this camera, it was not much of a learning curve. The menu system is one of the easiest menu systems I've ever dealt with. I believe it's something they took from Canon, and I love how Red implemented the new menu system within this camera. Pro number six, the autofocus. I mean, how often do you hear a cinema camera having autofocus? This camera actually has autofocus, and I wouldn't say I would trust this on all my shoots, but for small jobs that I'm working as by myself or a quick running gun, and I don't have anybody pulling focus, I do trust the autofocus to get the shot I need as long as I have the time to keep practicing it and get it over and over. It's not something I will rely on for big jobs, but it is something you can use. Next pro, everybody wants to know how this thing balances on stabilizers. I think it's one of the easiest cameras to balance. Once you hook up the battery rather onto the rig, I really want to put the batteries on the camera because then that kind of makes it a little bit more of a challenge to balance, because of the batteries and then the back of the arm, the way the gimbals are built, it doesn't allow the camera to fully tilt backwards. So I suggest running power to an external battery to the camera, and after that it's much easier to mount. Pro number eight, as I mentioned, this camera is weather sealed. It is meant to test the limits. It is meant to take risk. People ask me, can you take it in the snow? Can you take it in the rain? What type of weather can it handle? It can handle all weather. My only suggestion is don't jump into the ocean or jump into a pool with it. If you're going to do that, get water housing casing for the camera. This is my last pro, but I'm sure there's more out there. If I have more, I'll add them in my next video when I'm going over the breakdown of the Komodo and how I built my Komodo out. Pro number nine, get hired just because you have a Red. People will hire you because you have a Red. A lot of clients don't know what Reds can do. They just know that's one of the top of the line cameras, and if you have the Red, you must know what you're doing. And yeah, I've gotten jobs just off of having their name Red in my camera bag. I'm not sure what type of city you're in, because every city's different. I live in Philadelphia, so It's kind of a big city, but then it's kind of not. As far as on the creative side, we're still growing. I'm lucky to be one of the only few people in the city with a Red camera. So when people are looking for jobs, I'm one of the first people to call. So let's talk a little bit about the cons in this camera. No camera's perfect. One, I think the camera's still expensive. When you add the accessories on top of the body and lenses and everything, you're still looking to come in well over 8K. Con number two, when recording in 6K, you can't go over 40 frames per second, which is a little annoying to me. If you wanna go up in frames per second, you have to drop the resolution down to 5K, 4K, or even lower. And when you do that, there's a massive crop on your image. And to me, it's just making it more of a challenge trying to get the shot you want. You would think it being a crash camera, it would allow you to capture more slow-mo shots because you're getting more of the detailed shots, more of the like B-roll type of shots, or I would assume they expected this camera to be more on gimbals and stuff, so it's capturing more action scenes, which means you usually need more of a higher frame rate to capture the crisp look you're going for. My next con would have to be the RF mount. I know a lot of people are Canon users and a lot of people love the new RF mount, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world, but I don't have RF lenses. If you, like me, you're coming from the Sony background, or even if you're coming from the Canon background, which is the EF lens mount, why make us have to go buy another adapter? To me, that makes no sense at all. I would have rather just ran with the EF or PL mount, and that would have just made life a little bit easier without having to buy an extra accessory. My next con would have to be, there's no built-in ND filter. Come on guys, it's 2022. All the pro cinema cameras now are starting to have the ND filters in it. Put an ND filter in there. I hate matte boxes. Next con, I would say this is more of a con for all cameras and not just the Red, but of course it's all the extra accessories. You have to grab the top handles or side handles. You have to get the memory cards, the lenses, the shoulder mount. You have to get the batteries. Accessories add up continuously, and then you're just looking to break the bank at the end of the day. So I think total on my cage, which I will do in another video, I think I spent about a good $9 grand on everything. So when it came down to the monitor, it came down to the cage, batteries and everything, I think everything totaled out to about close to $9 grand. This is probably my biggest con of the camera, is that it eats up so much space. I have bought so many hard drives since I've bought this camera. You have the options of shooting in LQ, which means low quality. But even then, it still takes up a good amount of space. There is another option of shooting in ProRes, but the thing with shooting in ProRes is you don't have that same amount of dynamic range as you would as if you were shooting in that raw Kodak. My next con is kind of like a pro and a con, because I kind of like it, but then I kind of don't. It's the top screen display. Being on the top screen when you're setting up for your shot or scene, I think it makes it very easy just looking down at the camera, changing the settings you want, or changing the frame rate, or whatever it is you're changing the camera. I think it makes it very easy. But once you put on that top handle, the top handle starts to block the screen. And if you have a focus puller that needs to see the screen, you'll have to put an extra monitor on the side of the camera for them to pull focus. They won't be able to pull focus from the top of the display. Another con that comes with this camera is that you can't delete files within the camera. So if you want to delete anything off the memory card, you either have to format the entire card or wait until you dump the footage and delete the individual files that way, which can be a little annoying. You have to be very cautious with space. No room for mistakes. So if you make a mistake, it kind of just lives on that memory card and you can't go in there, erase it, then go reshoot it. No, it's a whole process if you want to get that off of the card. My last and final con would have to be the low light. Even though I believe you can create some great images in the low light, you will need some lights on hand to kind of help you light the situation, but that's every set. You want to properly light your sets and your scenes. Even if it's a dark scene, just make sure you got the proper bit of light falling into your shot so you're getting the shot you're going for. I've had better experience on Sony's as far as like low light. It isn't a deal breaker for me. So if you ask me if this camera is still worth it in 2022, I would say yes. You're getting into the right ecosystem, which is allowing you to create some of the most beautiful images you've ever seen. 2, you're gonna get hired because you have a Red camera. And 3, they finally made it affordable for all of us. So if you enjoyed this quick video, please make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share. You can follow me on Instagram for all things SMS at Steven Michael Official. And this is Filmmaking for Dumbasses. Thank you for watching.